All right, if folks in the room at Lone Tree want to grab a seat, we can go ahead and get started. We'll probably get a few more people popping in on Zoom. Bill, can you unmute the room so we can find out if we got any guests there?
We'll see if this works, and hopefully we won't get too much feedback.
So far, so
Okay.
good.
Okay, so far so good. I know we've got one guest here. Tom, why don't you stand up, Tom, and whatnot, tell us a little bit about what you want to get from the club and how you found us.
All right, well, I found it by, just by Googling. I can't remember what I looked on Mike's Canvas website, and I found it on there too, so it's like, wow, it's an omen, I guess. I've been retired for about 8.5 years now. I've always enjoyed pictures and photography, but since I've retired, I've really pursued it quite a bit more. Hopefully, I'll get some great feedback and some insight and additional information, because I'm still just an amateur. But as far as my photography, I enjoy taking pictures of just about anything. I work that in with my other complementary pursuits. I like to hike. I like to ride my mountain bike. I like to camp. I like to travel in-state, out-of-state, out of country being my favorite. And some of my complementary pursuits, since I've retired, I've really gotten interested in Colorado history. So there's a lot of places I go where I can take pictures of some of the old historical sites, the ghost towns, mining towns. So I get all that information as well as getting some really fun pictures. A couple of years ago, I think it was, I took my bike and my camera, of course, and my 15-pound camera pack. And I rode around the Mineral Belt Trail in Leadville, and I got some really fun pictures of the old baby Doe Tabor cabin where she died. This summer, I went up to Anomalies Forks, and I love going around southwest Colorado, around the Telluride area. Great pictures to be had down there. I really enjoy going down there in the fall, and I'll be headed there this fall.
It's beautiful now.
Take a look at the fall colors, and probably also go to places like Crested Butte, Taylor Canyon, but I get around and I just have a blast. I can tell you the pictures I've taken, but I guess my best picture is the one that I haven't taken yet. And I'm kind of running out of room on my wall, so I'm trying to figure out what to do now with my pictures other than just letting them sit and collect dust in my computer. So I think in a nutshell, that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, thank you, sir, and welcome to you. Glad to have you here. And you apparently you visited a lot of the spots that a bunch of the rest of us like to go to also. But you mentioned about the bike trip. Was that 15 or 50 pounds that you were carrying?
15.
Awesome.
And I think like 50 after riding about 15 miles.
Yeah. I know sometimes we photographers can overdo it and overload our packs. So
Yeah,
Good.
I love to do winter photography too, on some snowshoe trails. Great.
nice. Very good. Well, thank you, sir.
That's not what I'm seeing.
And on Zoom here, I see Alandria. You're back. Welcome again. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep. And we have I don't know, do we have any new members in the room there? Jim or Diane or Kiefer?
I think Jim's traveling right now.
Gotcha. All right. And I do see Beth Elizabeth Alexander, one of our new members. Welcome, welcome. Glad you're here. All right. So just a few announcements before we get rolling here. On this past Friday, I put out an email to everybody about the Focus Point Expo that's this weekend. We're going to have a table there. Kyle's going to be manning one day, and I think Ben and Cecilia are doing the other day. They're doing Friday.
Ben and Joy.
Ben and Joy. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So information about that again was in that email. I also put it in the September newsletter. So if you want to go, I mean, this is the first kind of camera show, a bigger camera show that's kind of come to Denver a long time. So, and I hear that they hope to do it in future years too if they get good response out of this. So there's all kinds of demonstrations and little mini seminars that they're doing, and if you pop over to their website, you can see all the details about it, what times those things are. They do request that you register if you're going, even if you're just going to walk through, which you can do for free. They just want to get an idea of how many people are going to be there, I guess. And then there's a small cost if you wanted to attend any of the other sessions. But that's a cool thing, and you should probably check it out. I'll remind everybody again, September 25th, our competition in 2 weeks. It is moved to a Thursday, not a Wednesday. There's a conflict that was scheduling at the Civic Center. The police department is taking over on Wednesday night, so we got bumped to Thursday. I'd also like to announce that we have a very, very special guest with us this evening. His name is Kyle, and he is our current, as of today, president of the club. Thank you, Kyle, for volunteering to be president.
I didn't realize I was going to get outed tonight, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Carl is right.
Do you have your Grand Poobah hat with you?
I don't. Let's see it. Cloth napkin on the.
There we go.
There we go.
There you
Something like that. Yeah.
You've been anointed. Well, we appreciate you hopping in, and we've been, maybe some people in the club don't even know this, but we've been without a president for all this year, which hasn't happened in a long, long time. So I'm glad to have somebody at the helm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is, well, I'll turn it over to you, Kyle. You can talk about it, and then you can intro Mike and everything else. But October 4th, you're doing a special little thing. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So Carl mentioned in the newsletter, for those of you who read the newsletter, that the Scott Kelby Worldwide Photo Walk that happens annually is coming up this October 4th. Right. I assume that's what we're talking about, Carl. Yeah.
Yes.
And he had mentioned that there was only one walk scheduled in Colorado, and that is in the Fort Collins area, which is great. I know that some of you guys live up near there. Awesome. But there was a palpable void in the Denver area. And so I signed up to host a walk in Denver. And I got such great feedback from that walk that we did with our group, as well as the the Metro Denver photography group through Meetup in the River North or Rhino district, that I decided to do it there again in hopes to get some people, because this is open to anybody who's interested. These things are, and they're free to attend. And so I thought we'd do it again there. I would love it if you guys would join and spread the word. It is, I just said, it's free to join. They do designate a charity that they support, which is, I don't have my notes in front of me, but I believe it is Hope Springs Orphanage in Kenya, something like that.
It's called Springs of Hope Orphanage.
Springs of Hope. Thank you. So donations are welcome. And if you buy, say, for example, any merchandise like a T-shirt, I already bought a T-shirt. All of the profits for merchandise goes to benefit them as well. So it's a cool deal. It's something that happens all over the world on that day that Scott Kelby's organization, Kelby One, has been doing for 15 or 20 years, maybe something like that. For those of you who don't know,
it's been a long time. Yeah, there was a little pause, for COVID, and a couple of years after that, there were some issues. But yeah, he's been doing it a long time. Yeah. Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, Scott Kelby is probably as close to a household name in the world of photography and especially Adobe products than anyone. I mean, he's just he's a great guy. And if you've ever read one of his books, you know that he's got a fun sense of humor, and he's really easy to learn from. He's a great guy. All right, shall we get going?
I think so.
Okay. Mike, I'm going to read a quick little introduction that I wrote about you just to hear about 30 minutes ago, and then I'm going to hand it over to you. But I would love for you to add anything to this that you see fit, so that we know who you are. Mike is a Nikon ambassador and has shot all sorts of stuff, sports, professional sports, I should say, air-to-air aerial, landscapes, concerts, and much more, including extreme weather, which is the topic of tonight's program. Mike moved to the Denver area in the last year or so from Dallas. He is a passionate photographer who loves to teach and inspire. He loves to capture images that show people how beautiful this world is when you actually look at it. Mike, please feel free to add to that, and handing it over to you.
All good over there, Carl and you guys?
Yeah, sounding
Okay,
great.
right on. Okay, so Bill, you've got one important job, buddy. I'm gonna have you hit that right arrow when I give you a thumbs up here.
Okay.
All right, so now we're ready to go. All right, so yeah, guys, my name is Mike Mezeul II. I am a Nikon ambassador, a new implant into Colorado, where I feel like I can actually breathe. There are mountains. Actually, I can't breathe until I, get used to, being at 5,000 feet. But my heart is happy here. So it's been awesome to come out here and meet so many awesome folks. And this is my first camera club to actually present to. So let's go into Tornado Alley. Anybody ever seen a tornado before? All right. Anybody gone and said, hey, I need to get my camera, or hey, I need to go inside? So I'm originally from upstate New York, but when I moved down to Dallas, the storms in New York versus the storms in Dallas are very different. And I used to hide underneath my parents' bed. And my mother loves to tell the story of she knew I was hiding because she'd look underneath her bed and then she'd see my glow-in-the-dark Ghostbusters pajamas. And she knew I was under the bed. But there became a time where I learned, hey, maybe these storms aren't to be feared. There's a little bit of science behind them. There's a little bit of beauty behind them. So I'm going to take you guys through hour-ish plus or so, talk about where I've seen the beauty in Tornado Alley, how I've seen it, how I've documented it, all that goodness. So let's go to the next slide there. We'll hit up a few things I've already talked about. Everybody always wants to know how to pronounce my last name. It's Mezeul, exactly how it doesn't look. Born in Rome, not Italy, New York, up on Griffiths Air Force Base, and now live up in Nevada. When I'm not shooting, I'm a dog dad. I play hockey, just an overall nerd, love everything outdoors. You're talking about being outside, love it. Like, that is my life. Nikon ambassador, which is a huge privilege. I've been a Nikon ambassador now for going on 2 years. Yeah, so that is a huge, huge privilege. I've been deemed a extreme nature and landscape photographer. I guess that's the correct and polite way of saying you're a little crazy and you photograph things that most people don't. But my career has been built off of shooting everything, including babies, weddings. I photographed NHL, MLB, and NBA for 6-7 years. A lot of live concerts, got to work with a lot of cool people like B.B. King and Kiss and all those guys. And also worked a lot of aerial photography. So air-to-air photography, getting in one plane, photographing another plane with a beautiful backdrop, harnessed in. It's a little bit of a rush, pretty cool. But over the last probably 10 years, let's go on next slide here, please. I've spent a lot of time working for different publications like Nat Geo and BBC and PBS, documenting volcanoes all over the world, from Iceland down to Guatemala, over to Hawaii, Vanuatu, all different locations. And, I like things not only that give my mother, stress, but that show the beauty of this world and show the power of the world and show people places that do exist that you may not think actually do exist, right? So a lot of volcano work. Left frame there is from Iceland, bottom frame is from Iceland, top frame is from Guatemala, top right frame. I do a lot of landscape photography as well. So I do a lot of landscape photography for different publications, but I also teach it, which is one of my biggest joys to, kind of give back. I've had a lot of people take me under their wing to guide me through my career, introduce me, help doors open. So getting to, teach, do workshops, seminars, all that stuff. Do some seminars that are coming up with Mike's camera as well that haven't been announced, so keep an eye on that. But it's been really fun to get to travel all over the world. to teach. This year it's been Antarctica, Patagonia. I go to Iceland in a few weeks. I teach up in Yellowstone. I go to French Polynesia Saturday to teach down there. So it's been a pretty cool career. And then the most recent thing in the past few years that I've taken a lot of pride in is conservation work, especially whales. I do a lot of work underwater with humpback whales, working on a project currently that is helping bring awareness for issues with bycatch and also fish net entanglement and which is bycatch, sorry, and then also impacts and accidents from speeding boats. But I also do a lot of work above land, Africa, Antarctica, all over, just trying to raise awareness for protecting, our wildlife. And then when I'm really, really bored, and I've had a few coffees, I like to stay up late and focus quite a bit on the night sky. So I teach aurora workshops over in Norway and Iceland and in Canada and those places as well. So ironically, though, that photo on the left there was shot in, anybody want to take an idea where? Kansas. That was that big Aurora KP9 storm, May of 2024. So onward we go. Lastly, a little bit of the aviation work. I grew up on an Air Force base, so love being around airplanes. So I've been doing a lot of air-to-air aviation work for some magazines and just private use for pilots. Love taking photos of themselves because they never get to see a photo of themselves. So it's pretty cool being up there and, coordinating these aircraft with some really cool backdrops. All right, let's get going into the main juice of it. You did not expect to see me at 15 years old, did you? But this is where it all began. That is me on the left with my orange street cone shorts. And I don't even know how to describe the sandals. Nobody's got those on, right? But that is why I didn't have a girlfriend at all in high school. And I'm not talking about the attire. That's my car. So 15, 16 years old, I was fascinated by the weather. Not scared of it anymore. I wanted to learn as much as I could. So I reached out to a guy named Eric Wynn, who worked up at the National Severe Storms Laboratory in Norman, Oklahoma. And I said, help me build a weather package for my car. I want to chase storms. So he did. And that's what we built. That's the same setup that the National Severe Storms Laboratory Mezenets had. And then this was back in the day before we had all the lovely data accessible on our phone. We knew every library all through Oklahoma and Texas. We knew their hours of operation. We knew how much it cost to use their internet, their dial-up. And we would go and use that to find our storms. And then when we're out there and we didn't have the internet, we'd use the actual car and all the instruments on top of the car to figure out, do I need to go 30 miles east, 30 miles west? What's going on? What's changing? I know what you guys are thinking. Where can I purchase a print of this amazing photo to hang over my bed? We can talk after. But this is my very first lightning photo. And it's shot on something that most people these days don't know about, and it's called film. And it is a beautiful, wonderful shot. Double exposure, a little motion blur, by standing underneath my parents' awning, pointing my Yashica camera up at the sky, and waiting for a lightning bolt, and then shooting as quickly as possible. That is how I started shooting storms, and obviously I've learned a lot since then. Back then, I saved up my allowance to go get the film developed at the very prestigious Eckerd drugstore, if you remember them. I didn't have enough money to get the same day development, so I had to patiently wait 24 hours to get my film back. And then the way I learned is I had a yellow notepad and I wrote down frame by frame my settings. And then I would go to the library, flip through the card catalog, find photography books, and try to figure out what I did wrong. I have a lot of black frames sitting at home, a lot. But when I first came across this shot here, that's what made me go, okay. Photography plus storms, this is a newfound passion of mine. So we'll get into some of the photographs here, but first I want to show you a little bit about what goes into documenting these storms. Tornado Alley, people think, oh yeah, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, right? Wizard of Oz, Kansas. Tornado Alley goes all the way down from like San Antonio, Texas, up to the Canadian border and even into Manitoba and that area. It goes pretty much from Missouri to the Colorado Rockies here. It is shifting more towards the east, though, as the climate is changing. We are seeing a stronger shift in Tornado Alley to the east. The traditional areas where you used to have tons of tornadoes and storms are seeing less. That's a conversation for another day, but it's a big area. So how do you find something in that area? Well, onward we go. So there are a couple things that we use. I can spend a whole session talking about this, but one of them is called the Storm Prediction Center. They put out these little graphical outlines of, hey, here's where storms may happen today. And you can see, for example, on a day 2 outlook here, it's saying anywhere from Oklahoma down to New Orleans. Well, that doesn't help you out, does it, right? That's a big old area. So let's take a look at the next slide here. We dive in a little bit more to a lot of different data. Now, to give you a little background real fast, I'm not just going out there and licking my finger, feeling the wind go, we go west. I originally went to school at the University of Oklahoma for atmospheric science. So I do have a little bit of background in reading all this data here. But you're looking at water vapor imagery, models, you're looking at soundings, which are vertical assessments of the atmosphere. You're looking at different shifts of moisture, where it's pooling, where it's pushing, all that, and you're trying to find that perfect spot to go to find a storm to take pictures of. When I go out there, what is in my bag? Well, this isn't a paid advertisement. I do use Nikon. I just realized I have my Nikon hat on, but I have Nikon Z9 and Z8 bodies with me. Everything from the 14 to 24, the 24 to 120, the 100 to 400. Those are out there with me for storms. A little bit different for landscape setups, but that's another day. 6-stop, 10-stop circular polarizing filters can all be beneficial out there. And a sturdy tripod, because if you've been around a storm or two, it gets a little breezy. So, day of the chase, what does that look like? How do you find the storm? How do you even get a photograph? Well, you wake up early. Probably didn't sleep much because you're looking at data. You leave the road sometimes as early as 6 a.m. and you can drive up to 800, even more miles a day. It's called storm chasing for a reason. You're always checking the data in the car, on the phone. When you stop to go get gas or at the restroom, you're always monitoring what's changing and whatnot. And there's no guarantee. I have driven from Dallas all the way to Wichita, Kansas, got a Dairy Queen, got a tan, and I went home. That's painful. That is really, really painful. But on other days, you're a little bit more successful. So I like to share these 2 videos here to basically show what my friends and my mother think storm chasing is like. So let's go and play this one real quick, please. There we go.
Holy moly!
So that's what my mother and my friends think all the time, right? They're like, oh, you're right next to, you're Glenn Powell. You're right next to the tornado. You're seeing it up close and personal. And yeah, there are days like that. But let's go to the next little slide here. This is what it's more like. So go and let's play it here. Yep. There's a lot of time to kill. Okay, so you find an area that gets your interest. You think the storm's going to be there. You go out there. You wait. You always want to be early. So you work on a tan. You find fun things to do, like throw a rock at a pole or jump over the shadow of a windmill. It takes time and patience. So the waiting game. What are we doing when we get out there, right? So you're sitting there. You continue to check data, but at that point, the best website out there is www.lookoutthewindow.com. You're watching what's happening in real time. You're looking at the clouds. You're starting to get an idea of how things are coming together. Maybe a little bit further north, a little further south is better. You're also studying the road maps. You're making sure you're aware of like any road closures or bridges out, or something that happens quite a bit during the season is you have areas that get flooded the day before and roads close, and you think that road is there, and then all of a sudden you come across it while you're chasing and that road is flooded and you end up in a little bit of a predicament. So you're prepping gear. I like to set up my tripods with my 2 cameras, my wide and my mid. I get those all ready and laid out in the back of the car. And then you're also working on your tan, right? So I do take that time though to think about what it is I want to capture, right? Storms, you're not in control of them. And they are fun to photograph because they are one of the few subjects in this world that will literally vanish into thin air after you're done shooting it, right? You know, you go to Half Dome, it's still going to be there. You go to Skogafoss in Iceland, that waterfall most likely still going to be there, right? Storms, you have a few hours sometimes to photograph them before they're gone. So I'm thinking about, you know, what time is the storm initiating? Is it initiating at 3 p.m. or is it initiating 30 minutes before sunset? If it's, you know, maybe a sunset storm, I'm focusing more on maybe lightning. Or if it's 3 p.m., I'm focusing maybe more on storm structure and not lightning because it's too bright. The motion and the dynamics, is it safe to get close? Is it moving too fast? Or if it's moving nice and slow, I have time to set up in time lapse. You're looking at foreground, you're looking at the light, you're understanding as much as you can, because when a storm happens, you have to not only think photography-wise, you have to think safety-wise as well, and positioning. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on. Now, one of the things that I'm a sucker for is foreground. Okay, I love a good composition with some foreground, something that tells a story, something that maybe shows, you know, this old barn that's been through storm after storm, but it's still, you know, lasting and you know, may last one more storm, may not. But one thing that helps me out is whenever I'm driving, like I said, you could drive 600, 700, 800 miles a day. If I happen to see something, I'll pull over real fast. I'll take a photo on my phone and I have the geotag location on it. Now, that doesn't necessarily usually help me for that day. But if I know I'm going to be in an area like Southwest Kansas that day, I can look up on my map on my phone all the spots I've geotagged, and keep in mind, like if I end up near, you know, Conway Springs, Kansas, XYZ might be there and the storm may line up. So that's something that helps me out there. Something that happens a lot though is you get lucky. I had one of my storm chasing workshops out with me, and I was very glad they were all wearing their seatbelts, because I hit the brakes so hard when I saw this shiny object in the field and I said, everybody get out. And it was this old rusted out truck sitting there. And we had beautiful Mamadas clouds coming over the top. We were trying to get back to the storm, but at this point it was like, all right, let's take advantage of the backside of the storm. Really great foreground, lightning coming out, Mamadas clouds, unicorns, all that goodness. So sometimes you get lucky, but I do like to take as many steps as possible to, you know, build up an archive of spots that I might come across in the future. So some of the hazards, it's not just fun and games out there. It's not just get out, take a picture of a cloud. You've got hail. This one was actually documented when I was a project photographer for the National Weather Service for 5 years on a project called Hailstone, where these guys were absolutely nuts, loving to death. They drove vehicles, armored vehicles, into hail looking for record-sized hailstones. And this happens to be, or happened, it's been broken since, to be the Oklahoma state record. And the biggest one they found here was 6.1 inches long. Pretty massive. So that's me in the freezer of a gas station, holding the hail as we were doing all the dissections and cuts on it and stuff like that. Next hazard up is going to be our friend the rattlesnakes, which you guys know a lot about in Colorado. I've also learned there are quite a few of them here. So you got to be careful of those guys. Let's go to the next one. Visibility. It can change like that. So, you know the big dusty tornado we showed the video of where I'm like, yeah, Mom, this is what I do all the time? That's behind us. We're trying to get south to get away from it. So watch what happens to the road here. Let's go and play it. There's the road. There's the roadish. And the road's somewhere there. And hopefully there's not any cars stopped ahead of us. All while there's a big tornado barreling down behind us. So, you know, you have to always try to think, it's like chess. You're always trying to think 1 or 2 steps ahead. Make sure you're safe, make sure you're getting the shot, but also living to see the next day. Let's go to the next one. Floods, we talked about here. And on to the next one. There we go. So, talked about the driving. We've talked about the tans. We've talked about the boredom at times. We've talked about all the forecasting that has to go into it, all the rattlesnakes, the unicorns, all that stuff. Is it worth it? The answer is yes. So the moment that you see that storm starting to form, you get the adrenaline going. You get that anticipation. What is nature going to show me? I have absolutely no more control at this point. What am I going to see that day? Every storm is different. So let's take a little bit of time here. Let's look at some of the storms and talk about some of the photography behind them. So My go-to out there is usually going to be the 14 to 24 wide angle lens, but we're going to see some examples of using mid zooms and some tele shots. But I'm also, like I said, a sucker for foreground. I am a sucker for adding in some sort of composition to the frame. So here, beautiful storm, produced a tornado just a little while ago. You can actually see the remnants of the funnel kind of pointing down right there. But I didn't get any photos of it because I was too picky for my shot. So driving along, driving kind of left to right in the frame here, and dirt, 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 dirt. And if you've ever been through Kansas before, you know it's usually a lot of dirt or a lot of corn, right? Well, eventually that dirt and that corn met, and I saw this cool kind of separation between the two colors. Stopped on the road, took a shot looking down the road, hated everything about the image. Said, you know what? It doesn't give you depth. So I did what any smart photographer would do in the middle of a thunderstorm. I just took my metal tripod, and I went on top of a metal car, and I made myself the tallest object. Well, what that did is that raised it up, brought in that vanishing line, that leading line there, and I had somebody else driving right by me. I think that's actually a farmer, but then that little car off in the distance, I waited and waited and waited till I got in the right spot, shot it, and it added a little bit of scale to the scene. Because some of these storms, you have no idea how big they are. This storm here is pushing 65,000 feet. It's massive. So you really, even with that car, have no idea how to comprehend the scale of it. This is a beautiful yet terrifying storm in Sublette, Kansas coming at me. Positioned myself ahead of it. Once again, nothing to work with except the road. Decided this one was putting down way too much lightning for me to get on top of the car as much as I would love to. So I shot it down here, big wide angle lens. Now you'll see examples coming up here that 14 millimeter sometimes isn't wide enough. Sometimes I use panoramas to capture the images of the storms as well. But this is a really nice shot here. I love just kind of the peacefulness of the fields and then the apocalyptic feeling of that storm coming. Speaking of apocalyptic feeling, all right, I do like to find interesting juxtapositions out there. Man versus nature, right? Or something that conveys that scale or that impending doom. So this was thankfully an abandoned house. And I had my workshop with me. We just photographed this amazing tornado, which I think you'll see a photo of coming up. And we blasted out ahead of the storm. And it's really hard when you have workshop participants with you because everybody wants to pull over and stop. And you're kind of in your foreground diva mindset, right? You're like, I need to find foreground. And I saw this house off in the distance and said, guys, be patient, patient, patient a minute. We finally got there and we're able to get this scene here. And I just love the sense of like scale, right? And also like that man versus nature feel you get. So I'm always trying to tell a little bit of a story with these frames as well. Another example, this was, oh gosh, where is this? Somewhere in Nebraska. Once again, just kind of a similar scene, right? That man versus nature kind of feel. I like those kind of shots because, you know, we feel so strong and powerful, right? You may go to the gym, or you may have a lot of money, or you may have a big house, and all of that goes out the window when you're battling against nature, right? So those shots where you kind of create that juxtaposition are not what I'm always looking for, but I'm keeping a keen eye out for. Once again, these past shots have all been 14 millimeters. Same here, 14 millimeter shot. Now, one of the things that I really love about photographing storms is the colors that become present. So what you guys are seeing here, my work, when I edit, nature is cool enough. I don't try to go 100% on the saturation slider. I'm trying to keep it to what I saw. And one of the things that helps me when I'm out there shooting is I actually take a quick video clip on my phone of the storm as I'm shooting it. So if I go back later on, I have that to reference. So I kind of remember what the colors looked like rather than coming in a little overbaked per se. So here, no tornado threat, just some hail the size of softballs, nothing to worry about. But that blue, that turquoise is what got me in this scene right here because without that color, you know, it's cool clouds, but that color really adds a pop. And that's all natural, and that's all just from the light refracting through the clouds and bouncing off of the precipitation and the hailstones. So you can see really, really amazing colors out there. This scene here is also another example. It's kind of harder to see without like the contrast of the lights, but up here is all turquoise and purple. And that is from the lightning just kind of interacting with the textures of the clouds here. And this is a completely non-tornadic storm, no big hail, just 80, 85 mile an hour winds. And what you're seeing here is, anybody ever seen a storm coming at them and it kind of looks like a flat pancake? So that's called a shelf cloud. That previous shot was a shelf cloud. This is the backside of it. It's called the whale's mouth. So as that turbulent air rolls over you, it's like a horizontal rolling pin, right? It comes over you and it curls back and it creates this really dramatic texturized clouds that's back there. And so here with my workshop again, let the storm pass over us or the shelf cloud pass over us. And we found this kind of grain silo to use. Loved how it kind of pointed up, gave you that kind of triangular point. So you get this upward motion leading from the bottom to the top there. All right, onward we go. So foreground, once again, showed you that image on the right. Just another example on the left there, just finding something as simple as a red barn to give you a little pop of color, a little bit of scale. Use that curvature of the dirt road as a bit of a leading line. Similar kind of storm as the previous image. You can see the backside of that shelf cloud kind of rolling over, creating all this turbulent motion and texture there. So kind of what I'm showing you is not everything that I shoot with these storms needs to be a tornado, right? Or it needs to be a big old supercell. There are so many beautiful parts to it that can be photographed. And I encourage people to take a look at storms a little differently, because I know some of you guys after I talk tonight might be like, next storm, might want to go out with the camera. Start gentle, and then, maybe you can work your way up. But some of these storms, like this image on the left here, that is not a severe storm. That's just a really beautiful kind of summertime thunderstorm rolling through, I think it's somewhere in Nebraska. Image on the right, no threat whatsoever. That's the backside of the storm right there. You guys, I've noticed we see lots of modest clouds here in Colorado, so they make for excellent sky shots. All right, what do I really enjoy? Well, something that tells a story. And one of those stories is the way that these clouds, which are hovering, a couple thousand feet above the surface of the earth, interact with us, right? So this shot, West Texas. If you've ever been out to West Texas, one, I'm sorry, there's not much out there. But two, if you go during the spring, it's a lot of freshly plowed fields, right? So you get these big supercell thunderstorms that move over them. They literally blow that dust around, or in this case, they become a vacuum. So what's happening here is we're looking west. All the wind is being pulled into the storm. It's called inflow. So I'm standing here looking at the storm, and there's about 55 mile an hour winds at my back being pulled into the storm. The storm is so powerful, it's literally pulling the environment up around it. So it created this really dusty, orange, kind of red atmosphere to it. And the cool thing about storms is they change like that. Yeah, you could see it, right? You could feel that kind of spiraling effect to it. It produced a very brief, weak tornado, ironically right next to us, but nothing that was thankfully substantial, but definitely rotating. This shot's about 10 minutes later, same storm. So it has come at us now, and you can see that cloud of dust. But what you can't feel, and this is kind of the bad part about still photography, you can't really feel that motion, right? If I were to show you a video clip of this, that cloud is racing left to right into the storm. It's literally being pulled into the storm, then pulled vertically up into it, creating this amazing color cast of the sky. Shots like these are what I love to photograph too, because like I said, it shows you that interaction of the earth or the landscape, let's call it, and the clouds above. Something that, we can't create. This is all just nature and water vapor creating this. This is, once again, 14 millimeter shot. Now, this is not a 14 millimeter shot, or should I say, a single 14 millimeter shot. This is I think this was an 8-image vertical panorama of this massive storm. Now, let's talk about the panorama real fast. A couple tips if you're not familiar with shooting panoramas. I always shoot them. Let's do a quick test. Pretend like you're holding your camera up. Don't be shy. There we go. Everybody goes like this, right? Don't forget your camera goes like this, okay? So if you shoot a panorama horizontally, you're gonna end up with like a really tiny kind of film strip look to it, right? Almost like a 1:3 aspect ratio. Going vertical, you get more of that 2:3 or that more like 16:9 kind of feel. So I shoot all my panos vertical. So Sorry for the Zoom folks, you guys won't be able to see this, but here's a frame, here's a frame, here's a frame, and so on, right? And that this is 8 images, so that's a little bit off. But you shoot vertical, you overlap each frame by about 1/3 to 1/4. You shoot as level as possible because there's nothing more fun to getting into Lightroom and your panorama looks like this. And then you give yourself bookends, right? So when I shot this image here, before I cropped it, I started here and I ended over here, just to give myself a little bit of wiggle room when I crop, or if I need to adjust any of the perspective, that I'm not cropping off any of the important factors. Now, why am I here? Well, one, the storm was amazing. You can see this whole storm rotating, right? You can feel it. This is called an inflow band on the right-hand side. It's pulling in all that energy, and this is your updraft, and it's literally corkscrewing it upwards. Now, would I have liked to be closer? Maybe. But in this circumstance, no, because let's play the game of find the tornado. Where is it? Back in there. That's a good answer, right? When you're driving your car towards that tornado, back in there is not the answer you want to hear, right? So this had a very large, very strong tornado to it, but it was completely wrapped in rain. So from a photographic standpoint, it doesn't do you any good. So when you have those kind of tornadoes, I back off and I photograph the storm structure, which is what I kind of find a little bit more appealing than the tornadoes itself. Another example of a panorama, I think this was a 7 image or something like that, 14mm panorama, impending doom, and kind of a nice day, right? So I like to show that juxtaposition there. Found a few hay bales to use as foreground, some scale there. Anybody know what that is? Going once, going twice? That is called an SLC. Also what we call a scary looking cloud. It's not a tornado, so I'm proud of you guys for not saying a tornado. There are a lot of things out there that look like tornadoes that aren't. That is one of them. This storm here is not even severe warned. Just a lovely summertime thunderstorm, but makes for a really nice shot. So 8 image or 7 image panorama on this one. Once again, keeping it a little bit wider on the ends so I have a little bit of wiggle room. Yes, sir. Yeah.
A lot of color.
Mhm.
Do you have any particular sweet spots for your camera settings?
So cameras, it varies, right? So here's the biggest tip I can give.
Hey, Mike.
Whoop, yeah.
Hey, Mike, just real quick, will you, for those of us on Zoom, will you repeat the question because we couldn't hear it?
Oh, yeah. It said, do I have any sweet spot camera settings? So with that being said, every storm's so conditional, right, and situational, right? But the biggest tip for photographing storms is I always expose for the highlights. All right, so for example here, I've got this kind of brighter background. I expose for that, and then I'll pull up the shadows and blacks and use the dynamic range to recover. You don't have the ability to really bracket, right? Because everything's moving. So if you're bracketing, things don't really line up all that well. So I use the dynamic range. I rely more importantly on the histogram than anything else. So I have the histogram pulled up. I look at it. I shoot to the right pretty much. So I get my highlights and my whites almost to where I know they're going to be clipped, but they're not. And that gives me a little bit more wiggle room in the shadows. So I'm exposing for the highlights, making sure there's exposed as bright as possible without being clipped. And then in post, I'll work the dynamic range. Yeah, so to go back to the histogram just real quick, not to deter too much, but to give you a little idea of how I operate with histogram is every camera that I get, I go outside, the first thing I do is I take pictures of, it could be anything. Like I did the campaign for the Nikon Z8 camera. They sent it to me. I was literally in the middle of Utah. I had nothing of interest, so I went outside and I shot the parking lot. And I shot some parts that were really, really dark, some shots that were dark, some shots that I thought were exposed well, then a little bright, then a little too bright. And I took those into, I couldn't use Lightroom because the thing for it wasn't out yet, but I took it into Nikon software. And I played around with the dynamic range to see what kind of dynamic range I had and what the histogram looked like for that. So eventually what I learned was I don't care how the image looks on the back of the camera. I care about what that histogram is showing me because then I know how much dynamic range I have to work with. So it makes sense? Yeah. Cool. Okay, scale. We've talked about that, but I love showing this image for one of two reasons. One, because it's got a really funny story behind it, but two, this ended up being the third place, I think it was, finalist for Environmental Photographer of the Year back in 2016, I think it was. So it got put on exhibit in Paris and pretty cool. But once again, I try to find ways to show scale and also maybe the us versus nature kind of feel, right? So this is out in Wyoming, once again, a non-severe storm, but it was producing a ton of lightning. That right there, that victim in the blue jacket is my buddy Barrett. Barrett was from Louisiana. I'd never been out storm chasing, so I said, Barrett, you want to go chase? Took him out for the week. So we went up there, and when I saw the storm, I was like, I really wish I had something of substance. Barrett, will you go put on this blue rain jacket and go stand out in the field for me? So he goes and he runs out there, and I'm thinking, all right, this looks great. I've got this human element, I've got scale, cool. And I'm shooting it. And it's kind of like that first image with the brown and the green field. I just wasn't getting the separation that I wanted and the depth and the scale that I wanted. So once again, did what any smart photographer would do, hopped on top of the car in the middle of a lightning storm, took a few shots, loved the fact that then pulled his head from the horizon line, created that separation, right? Well, I was so excited about the shot, I got back in the car and I'm looking through the frames and it starts to pour. Then it starts to hail. And then I look over and I see Barrett still standing in the field. And I roll down the window and I'm yelling at him. He comes running back and he's like, "Did you get the shot?" And I didn't let him know. Like, I have had the shot for 5 minutes. But yeah, a little fun story out of that. So I always try to, once again, try to tell a little bit of a story, not just here's a photo of a cloud. All right, so this is going to be a sequence to show you guys how quickly things can change out there. Sublette, Kansas, beautiful, what we call LP supercell, stands for low precipitation. It is rotating like crazy. You get that kind of candy cane, barber pole, corkscrew effect to it. This right here, another 14 to 24 millimeter shot though. This was more, I think, at like 18 millimeters here. I was not going for a lightning shot here. What I was going for was a 1 second long exposure to try to create a little bit of motion in that cloud, right? So I'm not trying to freeze it and get all that crisp texture. I'm trying to drag the shutter just a little bit. Happened to get photobombed by a little bolt here. Well, this is the shot that I got, and I thought, okay, hey, that's quite nice. Little did I know nature was gonna be like, hold my beer, watch this. This is about 10 minutes later. Storm's moving closer to me now. You can see how the shape has changed. Here I was going for lightning. So what I was doing for lightning here, we're going to talk about how to shoot lightning in a minute. I was doing a little bit longer exposure. So I think this is around 3 seconds here. And I was shooting continuously in hopes of that bolt passing in front of the frame while my shutter was open. 3 seconds, I think this was about 200 ISO around f/18. So I'm bringing the ISO low, the aperture high, trying to cut out as much remnant light as possible, and then dragging the shutter as long as I can. Well, the next shot here had to move because that storm got right on top of me. Dropped a little south here, 14 millimeter shot, shooting for lightning and the storm structure. Couldn't be too picky with the foreground here because a little further north, I'm in softball size hail. A little further south, this left side of the storm is extending over me and it's blocking my view of the actual structure. So settled on this field here, but lightning, as you're going to hear in a minute here, is probably one of the most frustrating things to photograph. Not just because you have no idea where it's going to land. Is your focus good? Is your exposure good? All of that. But this is a nice little case study of luck. 14 to 24, but I'm shooting at 24 millimeters. Good buddy of mine is standing right next to me. He's on the Sony 12 to 24, I think it is. He's shooting at 12 millimeters. Missed the bolt. How? Well, he was framed up just a little left, so he got the part of the bolts coming through the updraft of the cloud right here, but missed where it came down and actually hit the ground. So a little bit of luck, a little bit of lovely, friendly crap talking to each other about Nikon versus Sony after that. But overall, I got this shot because of luck here. But these 3 frames all occurred probably within about a half hour of total time. So you can see how quickly this storm changed. Then the fun part about it real quick is that storm, after I took that last shot, was completely gone in about 45 minutes. The whole thing, just clear skies, stars out. So everything I've shown you for the most part has been kind of from the front of the storm. Okay, now the back side of the storms also has its own beauty as well. You remember that kind of apocalyptic scene with the big supercell and the house in the bottom right corner? This is that same storm. We were out in front of it for quite a while, and I happened to notice that off to the west was completely blue skies. I could see that from the base of the storm, and then I cheated and I used visible satellite to make sure there's no clouds back there. Well, when I saw that, I said, the backside of the storm's got to be beautiful. We've been spoiled with a great striated supercell. We've gotten a tornado. Let's go see what the back looks like, because it's probably going to light up nice and colorful. Lo and behold, we get back there and it kind of looked like an atomic bomb went off. To see this kind of structure on the backside with lightning is quite rare, because usually you have a rain curtain there that's blocking out all of that lightning. We settled on this field here because a farmer had freshly plowed it. We had some nice leading lines. And once again, being in West Texas, we really didn't have any options. So we settled on this composition here. Widening old 14mm shot again. Here, though, what I'm doing is I'm time-lapsing. I wanted to see the boiling of those clouds, and I wanted to see the change of light from light to dark and pink to blue and all that goodness. The bolt was just a little bit of luck, and we're going to talk about lightning one more in a second here, so I promise we'll get to it, talk about some techniques. Guess when? Same storm. So I have to be careful when I'm out chasing with workshops, because you don't want to mutiny. When you keep people out for hours and hours and hours chasing a same storm, they eventually get hungry. And then they get hangry. So the group was at the hangry point. So we started to say, all right, let's call it a night. Let's go find the nearest restaurant, which happened to be a Wendy's. We're about 5-10 minutes from the Wendy's here. And I happen to look in my rearview mirror and I see a bolt light up, and I could see the storm looked amazing. So executive decision, we're pulling over. Cringed a little bit because I was waiting for the mutiny. It said, guys, trust me, get out. We're probably here about 20 miles from the storm. And it's a pretty cool experience, because what you're seeing now is the whole structure of the storm. The lightning below, the stars above. So in one storm, you had a tornado, you had the striated supercell, you had the backside of it with the pink and the purple and the lightning bolts. And then you can see the storm here with the stars above it, which doesn't happen all the time, because sometimes you'll have a big, what we call cirrus deck up above that blocks out, or a stratus deck down below. So here, once again, using the 14 to 24, but it's more so about 20mm here. And it's a hard shot to get, because you're trying to get the bolt of lightning, which is really bright, but also trying to expose for the stars above. So what I did is I went old school. I grabbed my graduated neutral density filter, and I held it upside down in front of the frame here. So that helped block out some of the brightness down below, but also let in some of the exposure at the top. And it worked out quite well. And what I was doing is I didn't have it actually on the holder for the filter. I was slightly moving it up and down, so you didn't see a distinct graduation to it. And that worked out quite well here. Go to the next frame. Something else I like to do is also not just think in color. Some of these storms can be absolutely spectacular in black and white. And I also encourage you all to kind of remember that landscapes don't just reside in black and white, or in color too. The black and white imagery can be quite nice. If you keep a secret, Outdoor Photography magazine or Outdoor Photographer, I have a big article coming up in there where we're going to see some of these images talking about the power of black and white in storm photography. It just helps draw out the textures, draw out the contrast. Now, black and white isn't necessarily for every scene. I kind of have a theory that a good color image, nice soft light, soft tones, doesn't really make the best black and white. But a good contrasty scene that doesn't necessarily make the best color can make a very nice black and white. So when I teach my workshops, for example, in Death Valley, everybody, we go out for sunrise at the Mesquite Sand Dunes, and they say, okay, cool, we got sunrise, time for breakfast. And I say, no, we have another hour and a half out here, because we're getting into contrasty light, which makes for excellent black and whites. So kind of keep that in mind, that if you see contrasty light, maybe switch your camera picture control over to monochrome and see how that looks. Now, when I'm shooting in black and white, not necessarily the image on the right because it's already kind of black and white with the night sky, but when I'm intentionally shooting for black and white, I use a circular polarizer, and that helps really draw out the contrast in those textures. The polarizer is used for black and white, and it's also used for rainbows. All right, quick little intermission pop quiz. There will be a prize that has absolutely no value to it. If you can tell me, how hot is the average lightning bolt? Any guesses? B. Okay. What was that? D. $1, anybody? So the average lightning bolt is 54,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun. Pretty crazy. Now, I can't remember if I put this question there or not, so you get a freebie if I already did. But the average lightning bolt as well, the cloud to ground ones like you see here, 1 inch wide in diameter. That's it. So pretty amazing to think the power that resides in these bolts here. Lightning. You guys get some great lightning shows here in Colorado. Anybody tried to photograph lightning before? Been successful? No? We're going to change that. All right, so 3 different times of the day to photograph lightning: daytime, sunset, twilight, and then nighttime. We're going to talk about some ideas and concepts and settings for each one. So let's go next slide here. Daytime. Hard as lightning to photograph. Why? Tell me why. So bright, right? A bright object versus a bright sky. So really, it is super hard to photograph using any sort of long exposure. Well, people come to me and say, hey, well, Mike, why don't I throw in a 6-stop or 10-stop neutral density filter? Therefore, I can drag my shutter longer. That's a good idea. You can drag your shutter longer. But then that bolt of lightning has to be that much brighter to get through that dark piece of glass. And what happens is if you get a nice bolt of lightning in the middle of the day using an ND filter, it usually looks like a shoelace. And you're usually zooming into 400% to find that that bolt even exists in your frame. So daytime, what I typically rely on is time-lapsing. You can use the lightning trigger as well. We'll talk about that. But time-lapsing, what I'm doing is I am setting up my intervals to be as quick as possible, which is usually 1 second. And 1 second on, 1 second off, 1 second on, 1 second off. And what usually happens? That bolt usually happens on your interval. Just always happens on your interval. Well, then you go, well, maybe I should try a lightning trigger. So back to the time lapse for a second. I like to shoot daytime lightning time lapsing because if I don't get that bolt, I at least have the reward of a time lapse, which can be kind of cool, showing the rain curtains moving, the clouds boiling, everything like that. Triggers. Anybody use a lightning trigger? Okay, off the record, don't. They are so frustrating. So lightning triggers work by, first off, you need staccato lightning. So anybody ever seen a lightning bolt that strikes and then immediately strikes again in the same spot? That's staccato lightning. Anybody ever seen a bolt of lightning and just bam, done? That's it? That's called a positive bolt, okay? So if you have positive bolts, your trigger is never going to work, because what it does is it sees that initial strike, opens the shutter in hopes of catching the return. So if you don't have staccato lightning, you're missing every lightning bolt, then you're going, man, I really should have time-lapsed this. But if you do have staccato lightning, the trigger can work about 50% of the time. So if I'm going for daytime lightning, I'm really just going for a time lapse. I'll bring my aperture up, my ISO low, to try and get somewhat of a long exposure, quote unquote, and then hope. And you can see this shot here, ISO 32, f10, 1/3 of a second. Got this bolt here. It was a lot of luck. Another example of daytime lightning here. This is down in Arizona. Once again, shot by time-lapsing. Not a trigger here. These are all big, powerful, quick bolts. So a lot of luck here to have that happen during the time-lapse. If you are going to dive into the world of lightning triggers, this is the one I've had the most luck with. This is not a paid advertisement. This is just the one that out of all the ones I've tried, I've had the most luck with. It's also cool because if it really, really fails as a lightning trigger, you can use it for sound to trigger. So if you've ever seen like photos of like water balloons popping where somebody pops it and you see all the water frozen in air, like there, you can use a sound trigger. So if it fails as a lightning trigger, at least you have, you know, an honorable mention for it. Sunset and twilight. This is what I really love to photograph. Why? Because you start getting the capability of using longer exposures. Your light's dropping, but also you have some of the vibrant colors in the sunset as well. So that lightning really, really pops. Here on this shot, f11, 5 seconds at 100 ISO. You can see we've gone from 1/3 of a second to 5 seconds just by going from daylight to sunset. Here, always, once again, exposing for the highlights in the sky, but also with lightning, you have to kind of analyze the scene. If you have really, really bright bolts that are landing a mile or two away from you, maybe you want to underexpose that scene just a little bit. If you have little baby bolts landing 5-10 miles away from you, then maybe expose for the whole scene because you're less likely to have that frame blow out because that lightning bolt is so bright. I cannot even begin to tell you guys how many hundreds, probably thousands of images that are really beautiful scenes and then a whitewash of light because that bolt was overexposed. 2 examples here of sunset lightning. Image here on the left is some random place in Nebraska, exposing for the setting sun over there. So the raw of this is rather dark over here. This is exposed well, using the dynamic range, pulling the exposure up, also a linear grad to come across here and expose for this scene here. Image on the right, that's probably about 45 minutes down the road from here actually, off in eastern Colorado. 14mm shot again here, once again exposing for this kind of brighter area where that setting sun is, and then using the dynamic range to pull up. Now this works well because here on the right scene, or the right slide, image on the slide, these bolts were very close. So I already knew that I needed to expose dark because they were that close and then they're that bright. And one way to tell if a bolt is really close is if you can see where it's landing on the ground and it's lit up. That's when you know that's a little close. So exposing for the highlights off in the distance and then a little bit darker. Nighttime lightning. The easiest lightning to shoot. To me, it's not as fun as the sunset twilight lightning because usually it's white on black, right? Unless you happen to be in the mountains somewhere down from Monsoon in Arizona where you're seeing some of those landing points where that lightning is contacting the ground and illuminating it. The image on the right here, a few little stars above, so that can help save that shot there. But at night, you can really utilize long exposure. So this shot's 25 seconds here. I'm not worried about overexposing too much. I am making sure that I'm understanding the kind of lightning that's happening here. Is it close or is it far? But yeah, you can really get away with longer exposures at night, which put the odds in your favor of getting a bolt. Next shot in our scene, there you go. We've already seen this one here, but just an example of a really nice nighttime shot here. I'm up on a hill, kind of looking down into a valley as the lightning's striking and illuminating the ground there, and also probably terrifying every single person that lives in that little neighborhood. This is what I enjoy about nighttime photography. You don't see this in the daytime, and you don't really get the feel for it at sunset. So one of my favorite times a year to shoot lightning is monsoon season. So August, September, really in the Tucson area. This is Tucson. Somebody really did not like the mountains that day. All one frame here. This is actually shot though at about 80 millimeters. So I noticed that this one area of the mountains kept getting hit. So not gonna lie, I was in Tucson, I was in a parking lot of Walgreens. Threw on the long lens, which helped eliminate a lot of the light pollution that was around me, and zoomed in on this area here. Longer exposure, I can't remember exactly how long, but I can tell you it was probably over 20 seconds. and then boom, 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 3 bolts. And then I cringed a little. Why? Because I had no idea what my settings were. I was shooting earlier, was not expecting to pull over and shoot again, and I had no idea if I actually had the right settings for this. And fortunately, I did-ish. They were a little bright, but just pull the exposure slider down in Lightroom and it recovered everything here. So this is what I like about the nighttime shots, is when you can have some sort of interaction with the landscape and the bolts, and you can see that happening and that illumination taking place. Nighttime with storms, you know, it's not necessarily the most interesting thing, because you have to have the right lightning in the right place. And this is an example here of lightning illuminating the whole structure of the storm. And you can see it's rotating once again, spinning around in our atmosphere here. I don't really chase these kind of storms at night because, one, there's a danger, and two, more likely than not, the lightning is not in the right place. This storm worked out well. I was moving very slow. I was able to set up my tripod, do, I think it was 5-second long exposures for this shot right here. And I was able to see everything that was going on in the storm, not necessarily with my eyes, but through what the camera is capturing. So I was able to stay safe that way here. Nighttime though, it is, in my opinion, to be further back with the storm than closer, because you really don't know what could be kind of lurking around in there. I also have a confession to you guys. I cheat. No, this is not AI. But I cheat in the way that I mean that is sometimes I shoot with 2 cameras. Okay? Because the odds are you point your camera over here, lightning's going to strike over here. You move your camera over here, lightning's going to strike exactly where you decide your camera. So sometimes I'll set up 2 cameras in 2 different locations and hope that something happens. Now here, once again, this is an example of somebody not liking this mountain. This is down near the Wilcox Ply in Arizona, and it was just getting beaten up that day. So I knew the lightning was over there. So what I did is I took my 24-70 and lived on the edge, a 100 to 400, and I pointed them both at this mountain. And I said, all right, let's see what happens. And typically when I do that, when I point at the same scene, I alternate my intervals. So I'll start one camera time-lapsing, and then immediately right after the other camera. So if one's closed, the other's open. Here, I said, let's do both at the same time. Did them both at the same time. This both happened. I immediately regretted that decision because I was like, oh my gosh, did I miss it or did I get it with both? 24-70 shot here, 100 to 400 right here, same bolt. Both of these are uncropped. So it's fun sometimes to play around with 2 cameras, one to increase your odds, but also maybe get 2 different vantage points of the same strike here. Now, I thought at first I really loved the 100 to 400 shot because it's like, oh, you get in tight. You can see these are called landing points where those bolts are actually hitting the mountain. But the other shot, the 24-70, I kind of like the environment around the mountain and the scale you get. So if you go here, all you see is lightning bolts in your face. If you go to that previous shot though, let's go back 1 frame there, please. Here, you can feel the lightning traveling through the atmosphere, right? And now a fun little fact for you too, where lightning, cloud ground lightning, which is your traditional lightning bolts, where it comes out of the storm to the ground, on average, it is 5 miles long. So here, you're getting to see that whole bolt travel 5 miles through the atmosphere and strike. That 100 to 400 shot, you're seeing that ground contact in more detail, but you're really kind of losing a little bit more of the story behind it. So to each their own on it. I will say I have this one printed, so that is my favorite, but it's fun to use 2 cameras at sometimes. And then once again, just hitting luck. This shot right here was never intended to be a lightning shot, okay? You ever heard the saying, if you're not there, you're only gonna hear about it? All right, so this is one of those moments. Did not plan on chasing this day. Got bored, said, all right, let's go check it out. This is near Goodland, Kansas. Went out there, forgot my tripod. Okay, well, lightning and time lapse is out the window. So said, all right, well, I kind of like the way that this bluish glow is reflecting off the train tracks. So I went to the train tracks, made sure there's no trains coming. Took a shot. This happened. This is completely handheld, okay? A 50th of a second right here, and boom. So lo and behold, going back to lightning, you can try all these settings, try 2 cameras, you can try the trigger. Sometimes you really do get lucky. Now I get asked often, Mike, I've been chasing storms now, gosh, 20 years. Do you still get excited? This is a fun little clip from the dash cam on my camera of me shooting in Arizona. So I'll let this kind of answer the question itself. Let's go and play it. There is nobody else around me. I don't know who I was turning to, but yes, it is still exciting. It is still riveting. It is still different every time you go out. And we'll start wrapping this up here. But first we gotta talk about our friend the tornado. All right. So why I leave the tornadoes to the end is because it's not all about the tornado. Everybody thinks if you go out to photograph storms, you're about tornadoes, and it's not. It's about the beauty of the clouds, the colors, the textures of the scenes, the lightning. But when you do get a tornado, and it does work in your advantage, it is quite exhilarating. And when I say work in your advantage, a couple of things have to happen for me personally to enjoy photographing a tornado. One, it's got to be visually appealing, right? Not like that one earlier where I said, let's find the tornado, right? Where it's pretty obvious, hey, this is a tornado. But more importantly is, I have 2 sides of my work. I have the storytelling kind of journalistic side, and then like the more kind of fine art beauty side of it. I've done a lot of journalistic work over the years. I've been in a lot of disaster zones, stuff like that. For me to really share images like this with you and be excited about it are tornadoes that are not affecting people's life or property. I have shots like that. If anybody's familiar with Joplin, Missouri, I was in Joplin when that tornado hit and documented the whole aftermath of that. It is a different feeling. You go from observing something that you think is amazing and beautiful to being almost angry at it. Here, these tornado shots are where you're happy, they're beautiful, nothing's really getting hurt except the farmer's field, right? So here is a quick example behind the scenes of what it's like to photograph it and what I'm looking for. Beautiful tornado in Lafayette, Texas. Really nice light coming in. Nothing's getting impacted. And this also shows why I'm always trying to think ahead out there and why I always keep a polarizer in my pocket. So let's go and play this clip here. So nice, slow moving, very big, what we call elephant trunk tornado going through yet again another plowed field. And not too much precipitation coming down. Now I shot that after I ran into that field and shot the next shot. So let's go to the next scene here. This is the image that I captured as it was moving through that farmer's field. This is at 14 millimeters again. 20, I think this is 20 millimeters here. Pretty amazing tornado. Good light coming in directionally on it, helps sculpt up that shape. Faster shutter speed here, I think goes around a 500th of a second. Really nice color contrast, the warm tones versus the bluer tones here. Light to dark, everything's going well here. Well, what don't you see in this scene that might be associated with a thunderstorm? Rain, okay? No rain, so that worked out well. I remember taking this shot and looking over my left shoulder and seeing a huge curtain of rain coming my way. Instead of running to the car, I reached in my pocket. The light's coming right to left, right? Rain curtain is now going to be between me and the tornado. What happens if you have light behind you and rain in front of you? Rainbow. So let's go to the next shot. Rain starts coming in. You can see it moving across the frame here. At this moment here, I took one more shot and I reached into my pocket and I grabbed out my polarizing filter and I threw it on real quickly. And I use, when I do my storms, I use magnetic filters so they could just pop on and off real quickly. Because I knew what was happening next. Tornado, rain, sun, rainbow. Right on through it, threw that polarizer on, rotated it to get that maximum polarization to bring out that rainbow. And I might have said a few words here I won't repeat in public, but I was ecstatic at this scene here because having the rain, and also some of this is actually golf ball size hail, the rainbow, the tornado, good light, all of that, it's exactly why you do this. It's exactly why, what kind of scene you're looking for with a tornado. Now you see two little houses down here. Luckily they got missed, so kept it a happy day. But the show's not over yet. You can see what happens here next with tornado starts to do what we call roping out. So as the tornado starts to die, it will thin, become kind of a snake-like object. It can intensify quite a bit real fast before it dies. So as it roped out here, ran into this field, couldn't go any further. I would have gotten a little bit closer if I could, but there were power lines down across the road. And you can also see this giant thing there that was not there 5 minutes ago. So there's lots of debris, didn't want to get a flat tire. So took this shot here, polarizing filter on, 24mm shot, rotated the polarizer to bring out as much contrast in the rainbow as I could. And then intentionally, I placed those windmills there. And when I say intentionally, I'm totally making that up. Just kind of love the fact that they were there to help give a little bit of scale as well. Now, something I do in my work to kind of help bring it back to life, because I shoot in RAW. If you've ever worked on a RAW image, it is quite flat in post. I do like to bring the images back to what I saw. So I do a lot of dodging and burning to help bring out some of the structure and bring that image back to life. So in the clouds, I'll do a little bit of dodging in the clouds to darken them up, or a little bit of, a little bit of burning, a little bit of dodging on the tornado to kind of help bring out some of that three-dimensionality to it. But once again, this is cool enough to see in person, so I'm not taking my post-processing back to a point where it's not real. And we're gonna start wrapping up here. Once again, a reason I try to utilize two cameras. Back to that shot with the house and the supercell at the beginning, this is that tornado that happened right before. Image on the left, 100 to 400. Brings you in nice and tight, allows you to feel that tornado rotating, feel it moving through the atmosphere. You can see the debris cloud underneath. 14 to 24mm shot on the right, showing that tornado with the entire structure above it, helping tell the story that, hey, it's not just a tornado, it is a little part of a very big machine. I also had what I call the unicorn storm with the storm. It was moving very slowly. So not only did I have one, not two, but I had three cameras with me, which rarely happens to be like, hey, I forgot I had a third camera, let's use it. Threw on the third camera with a 24 to 120 on a time lapse. And let's go ahead and play it, and you can see the evolution of this tornado here. So a little funnel cloud, hopes and dreams, will it happen? Boom, tornado on the ground, almost stationary, hangs out there, ropes out, keeps roping out, and now it's done. And that all happened within about 10 minutes or so. I had the workshop with me. We celebrated. This was before they were all hangry. But what a day. So let's go next. That is one of the other reasons why I bring the long lens with me. This is a 400mm shot, looking up at that tornado as it roped out. So that snake-like shape it had at the end there, time lapse is going. I threw on the 400, zoomed in. You can actually see the tube of the tornado there. So pretty cool little view that you wouldn't often see shooting just wide. All right, I like to show this just because everybody uses the dehaze slider. This is some of the challenges, once again, that you experience out there, is the question of, is it a tornado or is it not a tornado? So had my workshop with me, somebody goes, there's a tornado back there, Mike. And I look back and I go, is it? Because sometimes you get those scary looking clouds. Sometimes you get downburst of rain. I took this shot, then we had to skedaddle because I had to keep us safe. So let's go and play the video. That night though, took the dehaze slider. Pretty sure there's a tornado back there. So not everything is super visible, but you do have to be aware of what lurks in the shadows out there at times. Another example, big tornado hiding in the rain back there, rainbow. This I was very careful on getting up to because A lot of people think the strongest winds are where the tornado are, which is true, but those tornadic winds can extend out quite a ways. You can see down here where this building is starting to be ripped off. That's actually wind pulling up the roof there. And just a couple seconds after that, that whole building was ripped apart. Okay, modest clouds we talked about. Once again, just kind of showing you an example, looking up. This is a 200 millimeter shot, looking up at the clouds here. So not everything needs to be the big storm structure. But sometimes it is fun to shoot a little wider. This is a pretty cool phenomenon, and why I always encourage anybody looking at the clouds, kind of keep your head on a swivel. Don't just get fascinated on the big picture, right? This is looking up at some modest clouds. This is not me accidentally having a graduated filter on, nor is it me taking a grad in Lightroom and saying, let's make the right side blue and the left side warm. This is actually natural. Left-hand side, modest clouds being lit up nice and warm. Really nice tones over there. Right side, darker, cooler. What's happening? Way off in the distance, to the west, is another storm. And it's creating a cloud shadow that got cast on the modest clouds here. So it's pretty wild to see this dividing line right above you that's being caused by another storm way off in the distance. So pretty cool little shot there. Exposing once again for the highlights. What happened? Not a grad, promise you. Everybody heard of crepuscular rays? You ever looked at the clouds and you see like the heavenly rays kind of coming out? Well, sometimes there's something called anti-crepuscular rays, and they bend all the way from the east down to the west. The sun is setting 180 degrees across from this frame, and this light's bending across and hitting a little bit of rain, creating the rainbow and separating the sky into two. I've only ever seen crepuscular rays this strong maybe twice, and this was definitely the better of the two here. So this image though, what I like to tell you guys about this is unedited. This is literally off the raw here. So pretty crazy to see what that light can do out there. All right. Now I'm not gonna bore you guys with this. This is about, I think it's like 7 minutes long, but if you guys get bored later on, hop onto YouTube. You can look up The Chase. This is a film that I did for Nikon last storm season, and it kind of tells and shows the story of what goes into chasing, not just from the forecast, but also from the emotional side of things, also from the being away from home and all the lovely gas station fast food that you get to eat. It tells the story of the failures as well. But also I have cards up here. I have my website on there, my contact, workshops for next year. Everything for this year is sold out. Next year's already filling up, but these are some of the ideas for next year's workshops if anybody's interested. Some of these, the storm ones, if you ever want to do a storm chasing one, they sell out probably within 3 minutes. I have a newsletter on my website that will pop up here in a second, where you can go and join my newsletter, and that's where you can get notified when workshops are coming out. But for next year, I've got a spot left for Yellowstone, a couple spots for Oregon, a couple spots for Africa, one for the fall colors out here, one with the whales, if anybody wants to go with the whales. And then I think there's 2 spots left for Death Valley. But you can check all that out on my website. And then the next slide, here's the last one. There you go. So my website's MikeMezPhotography.com. With that being said, there is a contact page on there. What I like to tell everybody is, one, sign up for the newsletter if you get a chance. I do put out some educational newsletters with tips and tricks. But 2, I know it's met, but you guys, at any point in time, if you have any photography questions or anything like that, shoot me an email. I truly believe in paying it forward, and I've had a lot of people help me out in my career, and if there's anything I can do to help you out, give you some feedback, help you with the camera setting and whatnot, love to. I do travel quite a bit, so be a little patient with the emails, but our friendship doesn't end here. So that is my presentation on nerdy clouds and water molecules and all that stuff. But if anybody's got any questions, we can ask away and all that goodness. So thank you guys. Any questions?
So what are you gonna shoot in Colorado?
What am I going to shoot in Colorado? I am excited. So I just got a new car and it is not falling apart like my old one. So I'm excited to actually get into some of the backcountry and go just explore. I go out, same thing with storms and volcanoes. I go with no expectations. I think it's really cool to just go out and see what nature shows you. So I love everything. When I say I've photographed everything in my career, I mean it. Like I've done babies, weddings. I did boudoir photography for 5 years. I did modeling. Not me personally. I photographed it. I didn't pose. So I just love photographing everything. Really into the night sky stuff. But I've explored a lot in Colorado, just not living here. I've taught in Rocky Mountain National Park for about 10 years. I've taught down in the San Juans quite a bit. But there's definitely areas that I want to go explore more of that are more off the grid that I don't take workshops to. So kind of, yeah, looking at everything. I do a lot of ice climbing, a lot of rock climbing as well. So getting into some of those areas. But yeah, and that's kind of why I moved here is it's like, living where I live, it's like I can be in the mountains, but then there's a storm 45 minutes away too, and it works out well, and where I live in Dallas, I told my partner when I met her, I was like, I'm not staying here. Like I can't, it is not good for my mental health. Like I need nature. And my friends were like, oh, there's nature. There's a park over there. And I'm like, that's 1 mile of concrete that goes around trees. So yeah, I'm excited here to get out and explore just everything. I'm like more and more wildlife. I love the snow. That's the other reason I had to escape Texas is like, I would go get the mail or walk my dog and I just showered and it's 8 a.m. and I come back drenched and I'm like, I can't do it. So yeah, I like the snow. Plus, once you go numb, you don't feel anything. So yeah.
Any other questions, anything?
Awesome pictures.
Bill, thank you guys.
No, there's no chat.
Oh,
Well, I will just say that in the chat, I put for all the Zoom people a link to that YouTube video and also to Mike's website.
There's just some amazingly extraordinary pictures, Mike. Like hard to believe kind of stuff.
I
There we go.
think
We
I
got your
didn't
back.
hear what Kyle said.
Oh, I just wanted to say that those pictures were extraordinarily remarkable. Just beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I got to show you all the out of focus, overexposed ones sometimes.
Sure.
Got to share everything. Well, I'll also say that I'm one of the few people in the club who doesn't live in the Denver area. I actually live in Southwest Kansas. So all the stuff you're showing from Kansas, I live in Garden City. So the stuff in Sublette, that's like a half hour south of me.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
spent many a nights in Garden City, and I've also learned it's very important to know which way the wind's blowing and which nights to leave your windows open.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, cool.
And
Yeah.
for that to make
If
sense
you
for
guys have anything
everybody,
pops up.
there's
I
on
get
one
it.
side of Garden City is a feed lot, and during the summertime when the wind's right, the whole city smells it. So
I'm very aware of where that feedlot is located.
yeah.
Sorry, what were we asking?
Oh, awesome.
Mike, we had somebody pop a question just now in the comments. Aaron Alfinger
Yeah.
wonders if you've ever had a close call in the field.
Yeah. Real quick, Kyle, one second. I had a question over here, and that was, what do I do to protect my camera out there? And so the answer to that is two things. One is if I'm in the rain, 98% of the time, I'm in the wrong spot to photograph because you're usually obscured. That tornado with the rain was a pretty rare situation. But the housing, sorry, I'm still in whale mode. I just got back from the whales last week. The weather sealing on the cameras is amazing. If you watch the campaign video we did for the Nikon Z8, we took it into some amazing conditions where we were just dusted out and it never had any issues. So I'm not worried about water damage or anything like that. The funny thing though that I am worried about, and it's happened once in my whole career, is a piece of hail coming down perfectly into the front element of the frame or the camera, and it shattered it. So that was just bad luck. But yeah, most of the time I'm not really worrying too much about it now. if I'm doing monsoon in Arizona and you have like a haboob, so like the big dust storms, then what I'm doing is I'm putting on one of the plastic, like $5 Amazon rain covers that kind of cinches at the lens, and then the rest of it's covered, because that dust is so fine that there's so much of it that I don't want to risk that getting in there. So I've gone through a lot of cameras, we will say that, but yeah, I mean, the humidity is not too bad though. Like I have more issues when I photograph the whales and stuff like that underwater with moisture and humidity and the temperature difference than I do with storms. So, do you guys have a question, Kyle?
Yeah, Aaron Elfinger wonders if you've ever had a close call out in the field.
Oh, yes. I'm trying to think if I've got, give me 1 second. I might have the clip on my computer. Give me 1 second here. Actually, I think it's on my phone. Let's see here. I might be able to airdrop it to my phone if you give me 1 second. So if you can still hear me, I'll walk you through it. Last year, I was in Iowa, and these storms, they produce tornadoes in a pretty mechanical way, and you can usually understand where the tornado is going to be and where the hail is going to be. But on this day, the storm was literally doing everything that went against science, and it was dropping tornado after tornado after tornado in spots of the storm that usually don't have tornadoes. And they were moving at 55 miles an hour. So we had really strong winds pushing against the vehicle, and we had really fast moving tornadoes and very limited road networks out there. We were in southwest Iowa, so quite hilly and not necessarily the easiest area to navigate when you have fast moving storms. Long story short, we had a tornado rapidly develop right behind us, and then we had no way to escape it. So we had to take shelter, and I parked the car right next to a really big old tree that in my mind, I was like, that's been there for quite a while. So hopefully it continues to be there for quite a while. And the tornado hit us. Here we go. And luckily it was just the outskirt of the tornado that hit us, and it took the tree that we're taking shelter under and decided to drop it on my car. And luckily it didn't do too much damage to the car. Shattered the sunroof, the window, and dented in the hood quite a bit. But if you give me 1 second, I'm going to airdrop it to my computer here and I could share it with you guys. It's nothing too crazy from this camera, but I can tell you that I did need a new windshield, a new sunroof, and a new pair of underwear afterwards. Here, you know what? I have a better idea. I'm going to show it on my phone, and I'll show it. Let's see if this works, and I'll show these guys over here. Let me see if it plays here. All right, so there you go. That's the dash cam. It's going to be a little out of focus. Tornado's behind us, and then boom, whole tree comes down, and couldn't move the car or anything like that. And right behind us, this was the tornado as it moved. Oh gosh, I don't know if it's going to expose. There you go. You kind of see it, kind of not. Oh, that's not going to work. Well, you guys can imagine a tornado. That's what it looked like. But about 25 feet behind us, the whole structure was destroyed and gone. So that was a very, very scary moment, and 20 years of chasing that had never happened before. But that just is a quick reminder that no matter how much science you know, nature is still going to be in charge. So you always have to respect it. Cool. Any other questions from either side? Cool. Well, thank you guys for having me out. And like I said, if you guys ever need anything, don't be afraid to reach on out. So thank you guys, and let you guys get going.
That's really awesome of you,
guys.
Mike, to
Thank
offer
you.
that.
Thank
That's really fantastic. Bill, thanks for advancing the slides. Much appreciated, and
Yeah.
what a great presentation.
Thank you very much. And if you guys ever need anybody to come talk about volcanoes, let me know.
I may reach out to you.
Yeah, we could do chapter 2 of insane things to take your camera to.
There you go. That works.
Cool. All right. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and hand you back over. And yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Oh, I think it was done sharing. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I stopped the sharing a little bit ago just so during the Q&A at the end, we could see each person who was talking. So,
Well,
all
thanks,
right, well,
everybody.
thank you, everybody. Yep. Kyle, you want to go ahead? Mr. President?
Thanks, everybody, for showing up there in person and online as well. Great show, Mike.
Applause from the Zoomers, too. All right, have a good evening, everybody. Thank you.